welcome to the webinar today on used oil. We do have simultaneous interpretation in French and Spanish, so if you would like to listen in either of these languages, please click on the interpretation box and choose your language. The presentations will be in English today. So welcome very much to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. You're here today to attend the Islands webinar on best practice sharing on used oil in SIDS. So first, it's my role to tell you just a little bit about Islands, our program. Excuse me. So the Global Environment Facility implementing sustainable low and non-chemical development in small island developing states, GEF Islands program, supports 33 SIDS across the Atlantic, Caribbean, Indian and Pacific Ocean to safely and sustainably manage chemical and hazardous waste. A global project connects and facilitates SIDS to SIDS learning across and between project regions, including through dedicated communities of practice on the Green Forum and jeffislands.org, our knowledge management platform. And as part of our approach to SIDS learning, over the next 5 years, Jeff Islands is hosting webinars and training workshops on key issues SIDS are facing in managing chemicals and wastes. In these sessions, we aim to bring you insights, shared experiences, and knowledge on how SIDS can progress low and non-chemical development pathways. We hope that these sessions will assist in identifying opportunities for SIDS and provide a space to share best practices and solutions. We're very excited to have the opportunity to bring the SIDS community together through this medium and look forward to an animated discussion today. So today, we're very pleased to be bringing together several experts from SIDS to discuss the issue of used oil. Used oil has historically been a problematic issue in all SIDS. Oil is used in engines, refrigeration, and hydraulic and transmission systems, among many other industrial uses. And when it reaches the end of its lifespan, it becomes used oil. Over 50% of all waste oil or used oil is generated by vehicles. And used oil is hazardous because it does contain polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which are acutely toxic. It also contains heavy metal particles as a result of machinery wear and tear. And tonight we're going to be hearing from one of our panelists, Roland Weber, on one of the POPs, short chain chlorinated paraffins, which we'll also hear about how they relate to managing used oil. So essentially, Islands is here to help improve chemicals and waste management in SIDS, and this includes reducing the risk and the release of used oil into the environment and identifying best practice for used oil management in SIDS. Islands will also be mapping used oil recyclers that could receive used oil from SIDS as part of our work. And so with that brief overview, I'm very pleased to introduce today's webinar. And for those that have not attended one of our webinars before, we'll hear from a series of panelists and then open the floor to questions in between. Please do pop your questions in the Q&A box in the chat, and also please introduce yourselves in the chat. We hope this session is informative and generative and useful to your operations in your work, and that you find the time to share here and in the community of practice. Thank you again for attending today. We're very grateful. So moving over to our first speaker, we're very happy to have a representative here from St. Lucia. Davis Polion is the landfill site supervisor at St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority, and he's going to be sharing the experience of St. Lucia in managing used oil. Over to you, Davis. You've got the floor.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everyone. Just going to try to get my screen here. Everybody see that? Yes.
Yeah, we see it. Thank you.
Yes, so my name is Davis Foleo. I'm presently the site supervisor at St. Lucia Solid Waste Management Authority in St. Lucia, the heading of the West Indies. I'm just going to go for a few slides just to let everyone know how we've been managing used oil for the past 23 years. St. Lucia's Solid Waste Management, with our mandate to ensure that we try to protect human health and the environment, and that on a very proactive way to manage used oil from the inception of solid waste. Solid waste actually, this entity actually started under a grant from the World Bank. It was a World Bank project with many OECS islands. What we decided to do, as you would probably see here, is that the use oil generated at different entities across the island and also at our power company and ships, be it cargo ships or cruise ships, which would go at our ports. They also come in with loads of used oil. We actually have entities on island which are able to manage this used oil which is generated. What we did at the infancy stage is that under the World Bank, we got a donation of waste oil containers. As you could see in this slide here, the waste oil container it's a blackish looking one that looks like a donut with an extended pipe. This is a 1,200 liter waste oil storage container. And with that, we are able to deploy them to various entities on island where waste oil is generated. Now, one would also ask if the public is ever left out. No. What we did also is that there is a contractual agreement, not anything too stringent, with the persons or the entities receiving those waste oil containers where they must allow the public to come in. Any person maybe doing their own mechanical work at home, that they're able to store that waste oil and come and dispose it into these containers. So as you would see on the screen here, we deploy them at fire stations, at garages, anybody into trucking and heavy equipment, quarry operations, marinas, boat yards, car rental companies. Any entity where there's a fleet of vehicles, we try to ensure that these persons or entities or owners have a waste oil container. Also at our landfills, some fuel stations have a servicing or vehicle servicing component to the operations, so they would also have one station there. You might also see that the power companies, we do not have any waste oil containers at the power company because they make their own arrangements to ensure that the waste oil is properly stored. And also any cargo ships, as I said, or cruise ships that move at our ports. This is what one looks in actuality. This is the 1,200 liter waste oil container. This is actually at a quarry operation in the south of the island. This is a 600 liter waste oil container. It is actually at a certified garage. One could see that around the container is pretty clean, well kept. This is also one of the requirements in what I referred to earlier in terms of that arrangement with the entity. So we ensure that there's a checklist that must be adhered to ensure that the environment at no time is polluted, or we reduce spillage, and also ensure that if it does happen, that it is quickly dealt with. So our waste oil container, our waste oil collection program, we have three major entities. Coincidentally, the two first entities are owned by the same individuals, but we also have a third entity which does not deal with the kind of volumes that we would see coming from an entity like the St. Lucia Linen, who specifically deal, or the business is basically industrial laundry. They would use that waste oil as a fuel source. So as you will see at the bottom here, in terms of equipment and infrastructure needed to manage the waste oil, we have filters and water separators. The photo you see on the side is actually a filter which was made in-house by this entity because they have had years and years of experience in managing used oil, so they are able to tweak their operations as necessary. Also, you would need your boilers, which is what they have on hand. The settling tanks, the storage tanks must be bonded because you want to ensure that you could control any spillage, if any. And they also use tankers with spill control or safety equipment. So these are our three main players: St. Lucia Linen, St. Lucia Distillers, a distillery company, and clay products. They specialize, as the word says, in production of clay tiles, bricks, and so on. The two trucks, the two photos that you see here, the one at the top is the vehicle that is used to collect the waste oil from the waste oil containers. And the one at the bottom is actually one of the newer trucks just been refurbished. They have a tanker truck already, but this is going to be a second tanker truck that is specifically used when oil is being collected from ships or from the power company. So with in the first photo, basically they would pump the oil from the container into the barrels on this truck, and that they would bring it over to their facility. I should also mention that in the infancy stages, solid waste was in a position to help St. Lucia Linen with acquiring duty-free concessions so that they could purchase equipment to begin their operations. Before the boilers ran on diesel, and it was very expensive for them. When I interviewed them, they told me they'll actually be out of business if they did not transition to using waste oil as a fuel source. These are the storage tank. Each tank could hold approximately 25,000 gallons of oil. As you could see, it is perfectly bounded around to ensure that any leakage is dealt with in a speedily fashion. One will also notice the way that the tanks are tapped. That is to ensure that the best oil or the best product that they're going to harvest from these tanks, they would always start at the top as the oil settles. This is a photo showing the actual operations. They use at least 5 tanks with oil, and it goes through a system of filtration and settling. And at every point, as I mentioned earlier, the oil is retrieved from the top tier to ensure that the oil that goes into the boiler is of top quality, apart from using several filters and water separators. This is just a photo of the boiler that is being used. And basically, the boiler, as everyone would know, is used to ensure that you could produce steam, and the steam is used to heat water that they would use in the laundering processes, and also when they need to iron. They do a lot of ironing commercial, and also with machines that actually fold the laundry. With our waste oil management program, we do audit the garages to ensure that everything always goes perfectly. Or sometimes, if it's not a garage, just an entity with a waste oil container, we also audit that entity to ensure that the waste oil container is in perfect condition to continue its useful life. We also have public awareness, which would be undertaken by the persons auditing, which is usually the zonal supervisors. They go to all the garages and the entities with the waste oil containers. And also information could be sought from our website or a casual call to the office, and we ensure that waste oil containers are maintained. We also have some informal garages where we encourage persons, you do not have a waste oil container, but you could use one of those metal drums. You just ensure that it is sheltered, ensure that the bottom part is not exposed to the soil, and that in any way possible, you ensure that it could contain any spillage that takes place in a timely manner, just to ensure that the waste oil does not contaminate the immediate environment. Thank you very much. If there are any questions, I'll try my best to answer them.
Thanks so much, Davis. That was a very interesting presentation. I don't see any questions in the Q&A box, but I do have one actually. You mentioned taking the top oil and the best quality oil for reuse in the boilers, but what I was wondering is what you do with the waste product outside of that is filtered out, essentially.
Actually, the product is never, the oil is never filtered out. From what was explained is that even in some of the tanks, you have pipes where they would circulate hot steam to ensure that everything mixes up properly so that at any given point they can continue to use the oil.
Okay, so it's completely reused. There's nothing filtered out.
I actually took a look at the stack and it was actually burning quite clear.
Okay.
Very, very limited smoke.
Okay, that's great to know. And then Tony Taluli from SPREP in Samoa has a question about, is there sustainable financing for used oil in St. Lucia? So is there, I think he's asking for if there is a used oil levy in place, a levy, I guess, on the import of oil.
No.
No.
There is no levy in that regard. It's just what happens with normal products is that it attracts a certain duty rate in terms of coming, but there is no specific levy on used oil.
Okay, good to know. And then Wayne Neal also asked, do the 3 companies that you mentioned using the used oil, are they able to use the used oil the oil from Utility Corp?
Utility companies?
It must be utility companies, sorry. So
yes, they do use the oil from our utility, our electricity company. That is the oil being used in the diesel engines, diesel generators.
Okay.
Not the oil being used in the transformers.
I see. So the waste oil from the diesel generators.
Yes, from the diesel engines, yes, the diesel generators.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much, Davis. There's lots of questions there, and we'll continue with further questions after our next presentation. But next, we're going to be hearing from Julie Pilet, from also based in SPREP in Samoa, actually. And Julie works with the French government-funded project, the SWAP program, and she's going to be speaking to us today about some attempts to export used oil in Pacific Island states. So thank you so much for being with us, Julie. We're very excited to be hearing about your experience, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Melanie. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Bonjour à tous. So my name is Julie Pilet. I'm the coordinator of the Committing to Sustainable Waste Actions in the Pacific, so implemented by SPREP in Samoa and funded by the French Development Agency. So among other activities, the SWAP project aims to implement pilot project on used oil management. So in 4 countries, in 4 Pacific countries, so namely Samoa, Solomon Islands, Tonga, and Vanuatu. So first, we started with the development of national used oil management plans for these 4 countries. So the plans was presented to the national stakeholders a few weeks ago, and now they are being endorsed. And the next step will be the implementation of pilot projects in the countries. So we are developing the proposal, so I can't share any results so far, but one experience I wanted to share with you today is the failed shipment of used oil. We tried to do it in Samoa, but unfortunately it was unsuccessful. So based on the analysis report we conducted while we were developing the used oil management plan for Samoa, it was estimated that around 350,000 liters of used oil are currently stored in Samoa. So based on this results, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environment of Samoa asked SWAP to provide technical and funding support to carry out a shipment of used oil. And at the same time, the Japanese International Cooperation Agency, with partner with SWAP and SPREP, initiated discussions with an Indian company to conduct a shipment. So all together with refinery, JICA, SPREP, and local counterparts like the Samoan Recycling and Waste Management Association and the Electricity Power Corporation, we met the owner of this company. And the offer was pretty attractive because the agreement was that Samoa covers the cost for the in-country tasks. It means packaging, testing, transportation from the facilities to the wharf, and the insurance for the shipments. And then all the costs were covered by the Indian company. So the transportation, the shipment, or the transportation from the wharf in Samoa to the wharf in Dubai. We choose to do the shipment in Dubai, and the treatment and everything. But when we started discussing the discussion with the company, we had two concerns. The first one, we wanted to make sure that the treatment will be done in a plant that meets the international standards, because we didn't want that Samoan problem became an Indian problem. And the second concern was to have this shipment made under the Basel Convention, because PREP is also the secretariat of the Pacific Regional Center for the joint implementation of the Basel Convention and the Wegani Convention. And therefore, PREP is very concerned with illegal shipments of used oil in the Pacific. So about the first concern, we agreed with the company to audit the plants. And for that, we recruited a qualified consultant. So it was not, or it was agreed. So we did the audit in Dubai. But about the second requirement, it was because of this that the shipment failed. It's because when our consultant went to Dubai, we met with the Basel Convention focal point in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai. And she informed us that importing hazardous waste, including used oil, is illegal in Dubai. And even if it's reprocessed. And finally, so we were very upset with the company because they already had done shipments, so they may be aware of the legislation in Dubai. And our understanding is that there are some companies who play with the law. It was what was pointed out by the focal point in Dubai, reprocessing the used oil before doing the shipment. So it can be like dewatering the used oil. So when you reprocess the used oil, the status changes. So it from used oil, it becomes reprocessed oil. And so some companies used this way to play with the law and to avoid doing shipment under the Basel Convention. So based on this meeting with focal point in Dubai, we declined the offer from this company. But despite this failure, we learned a lot while we were preparing the shipment, and based on the experience in Samoa. So it's also because the scale of Samoa is a very small island, but we faced three main challenges in Samoa. So the first one was to find the packaging equipment, because we needed 100 IBCs to do shipment of used oil. We need specific equipment to avoid leakage. And so we use these IBCs, 1 cubic meter plastic container. And so we needed 100 to conduct the shipment from Samoa to Dubai. So it was the main challenge for us. It was to find these IBCs in Samoa. So there is only one company who can provide this kind of product in Samoa. And so it's reused IBCs. So it means that we also ask them to test all the IBCs with water to be sure there is no leakage, because we can't risk to have a leakage during the shipment and to have environment damage. So this was the first challenge. The second challenge was with the testing, because when you do the shipment, the shipping company and the company where the used oil are treated, they can request some specific tests like PCBs, flash point, density, water content. And also in Samoa, it's a challenge to find structures, organizations that can do the tests and that can also provide certification. So it was and it can impact the shipment, because if you have to send samples overseas, like in New Zealand or Australia in the Pacific, it can be very expensive, and also it can raise administrative problem, because it's, even if it's just small samples, you are sending hazardous waste samples, so it can also raise some administrative problems. And the third challenge was about the liability and insurance. And it was the main concerns from our legal team here in SPREP, because the question is, who is responsible if there is a leakage or if there is an environmental problem? Is it the company or the supplier who provided the IBCs? Is it the company who produced the used oil? Is it the shipping company? So it was also a question, important question when we were working on the preparation for the shipment. So now the situation is that we declined the offer from this company in India, but for Samoa, we are still looking for a solution to do a shipment of this used oil to avoid any environmental disaster because of these huge stockpiles that can produce a leakage if the storage is not done in a good condition. But for the other Pacific islands we are working with, we are looking for in-country solution for reprocessing or recycling used oil. And for example, in Solomon Islands and Vanuatu, we are discussing with private company to implement public and private partnership to have in-country treatment through pyrolysis, through pyrolysis technology. So the agreement with the Ministries of Environment in the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu is that SWAP will provide technical and funding support to implement a storage facility, and the private company will provide pyrolysis technology, and then the ministry and the private company will sign a memorandum of understanding for a public-private partnership to operate the facility together. So we are just we are finalizing the proposal. So hopefully we can have more experience to share next year, and hopefully we can implement this plans together with ministries and the private company. So that was the experience I wanted to share with you from Samoa today. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to respond to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. That was a really intriguing presentation, and I'm sure we're all very grateful to, sorry for the experience, but really useful to understand the three challenges that you laid out. I'm curious to know, with the pyrolysis that you speak of, in the potential pyrolysis in the Solomon Islands and Vanuatu, is that to to treat the oil via pyrolysis, or it's to power the pyrolysis plant? It's are you
So,
using the as a power source or as a way to treat?
No, so it's a way to treat the used oil. So you will produce 3 products. So one is the gas, like methane. So the gas is used in a cycle, so they can be burnt in the pyrolysis technology as a fuel for the machine. But also you will produce fuel like diesel that can be used for company for like recycled product. And there is a third product that can also be used for energy, but it's like a black product. I don't know the name, I'm sorry, but yeah, it produced 3 products. And also we are happy and we really hope this project will be implemented in the Solomon Islands and in Vanuatu, because pyrolysis can also treat plastic, tires, organics. So it can also be used. At the beginning, we want to focus on used oil, but if it works, we would like to extend to other waste streams. Yeah.
That makes sense. And what of the situation in Samoa? Is there anywhere onshore in Samoa, like we heard from Davis in St. Lucia, of the 3 different companies that are able to use used oil in St. Lucia? Are there any companies that can use the used oil in Samoa?
No, it's not the project in Samoa. Samoa, they would like to ship it overseas. And there is no, I mean, maybe if the experience from Solomon Islands and Vanuatu work, maybe in the future, Samoa, maybe the Samoa Recycling and Waste Management Association will be willing to implement a pyrolysis technology in Samoa, but today they just would like to learn from experience about experience from the other countries, and they will see in the future if we can implement such technology in Samoa as well.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much. I'm sure there'll be more questions in the final question and answer, but right now we're about to move to Marissa Charles. Marissa is with the BCRC Caribbean and part of the Caribbean Islands child project, but she's also working together with Tobago on used oil management, and Marissa's going to share some of their experience today with us. Thank you so much, Marissa, for being here. You have the floor.
Hi, thank you, Melanie. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever everyone is. It's my pleasure to be here today to present on behalf of the BCRC Caribbean on the experience from the Trinidad and Tobago perspective, as well as our pilot project for the development of a waste oil management system. So just a little background on Trinidad and Tobago and context for those of you who are not from the Caribbean. We are a 12-island state that is on the southernmost end of the archipelago of the Caribbean islands on the northern coast of Venezuela. We have approximately 1.3 million persons in our population, and our economy background has been largely from the oil and natural gas sector. With this, with our economy being mostly focused on the oil and gas sector, we have had about 2 economic booms in terms of the 1970s, where oil production was very high, as well as in the 2000s, where natural gas began to drive the industry. Our country has become sort of an industrial and financial hub for the Caribbean. Given that we've had a high rate of industry in this country, we've also then had a high rate of motorization and then a transport system. So in essence, so our high rate of motorization in the 1980s, it would have been estimated that we have approximately 180,000 registered vehicles on our roads, and that at that time, roughly 8,000 new automobiles were being purchased annually. it's cheap, and we do have subsidized gasoline, so that makes it relatively inexpensive for Trinbagonians to purchase vehicles, and it has been recognized that currently you have approximately 2 to 3 vehicles per household. We also do have public sector, of course, having state-owned buses, mini buses called maxi taxis here locally, the water taxi, the ferry service, all of which do contribute to sources of used oil. So in addition to the sources of used oil being from the transport sector, we also do have oil coming from the industrial sector, such as from your gas engines, your turbines, transformers, any compressors where you have heat and oil transfer, as well as the marine sector. So recognizing obviously that used oils are a hazardous waste, and if not managed properly, because of significant health problems, the BCRC Caribbean would have embarked on the development of a project to tackle the issue, based on a study that was conducted in 2009, where it was recognized that more than 80% of hazardous waste generated locally was of the category for waste oils and oily waste or hydrocarbons. So despite this major stream, it still poses a challenge. We do have locally, there have been privately owned entities and some public initiatives that did happen in the past with respect to collecting and disposal of used oils. So this is recognized. However, given that we are a regional organization, our main focus really is to demonstrate a feasible, both economically and environmentally sound manner for dealing with used oils. So our project has been funded through a national environmental fund called the Green Fund. The funds or the fees that are gained within this fund is through a levy, and the focus that the monies are used for is really for remediation, reforestation, looking at conservation of the environment and environmental education. So we have been able to tap into this, and the project has focused on, firstly, conducting an inventory of used oils that are being generated, stored, and disposed of, and to find out how they are being disposed of or treated. Looking at the possible environmental and health risks, then looking at a feasible and identifying technologies, alternative technologies for the management of waste oils. And our ultimate goal at this stage where we're at is the implementation of a pilot for the refining of used oils. So in terms of the inventory, we would have conducted inventory between 2016 to 2017 in collaboration with the Environmental Management Authority at the time, that was also conducting their inventory on hazardous waste. And we would have recognized, or the data would have indicated that an average of 1.8 million liters of waste oil is being generated annually for the country. Out of that, 233 liters per year would be for Tobago. And this is based on an estimation of roughly 44,000 vehicles being in use on the road in Tobago, which equates to about 4 barrels per day. And it was recognized that about 69% of this is being disposed of or stored at the sanitary landfill at the Study Park facility. So based on this, the inventory would have also focused on recognizing what were their current or past methods of disposal and storage. And so it would have been recognized that within Trinidad, while there was like a cyclic basis for how much waste oil is being stored, because our island is more industrial compared to Tobago. It was recognized that Tobago, we had, it was more of a steady basis in terms of the fact that they don't have steady collection. So in Trinidad, the collection with private entities was a bit smoother compared to Tobago. It was recognized that based on the past, there was a project that was being executed by the Tobago House of Assembly through their Department of Environment, where they partnered with one of the private companies, and for a duration of roughly 4 to 5 years, they were able to do waste oil collection in Tobago, and then have it come back to Trinidad for treatment and processing. This, however, it was discontinued around 2011 based on the fact that there was not enough financial resources to sustain the project. And then also the unreliability of the collection. So for those of you that don't know, so we do have a regular ferry service from Trinidad to Tobago and vice versa. However, in terms of the fact that you have to work with the stakeholders, have them collect, but have enough storage capacity to collect, and then limited collection times, it seems like that was one of the issues in that project. The reason why our project has focused on Tobago is based on economy of scale and looking at the fact that we do serve other smaller Caribbean islands that are of similar size and population to Tobago. And so the project sought to identify, now looking at this inventory of the amount of waste oil being generated, we would have identified through consultancy the recommended technology to implement a pilot to demonstrate a sound method of refining or re-refining used oil so that it can be used again. And so the selected technology would be a high vacuum 3-stage thin white evaporator plant. And because it's a demonstration project, really like a proof of concept, it's a modular plant that we will be seeking to install in Tobago in collaboration with the division, 2 of the divisions within the Tobago House of Assembly. And the plant is meant to produce an output of either grade 1 or grade 2 base oil. In terms of the any other effluents, it's meant to, the high temperatures as well as the pressure of the system is meant to recover different lube oil fractions, and any it should be able to distill and remove the light ends, water. Sorry. Right. So with this output, the intention is really to test, the feasibility of the use of this plant. Looking at, making sure we can manage the effluents that may occur. In terms of wastewater, most of this should be evaporated by an evaporator that's also part of the plant. And there may be some light solid asphaltene products that we intend to, based on the manufacturer and experience with the use of the plant elsewhere, should be able to be used within your road pavings. So looking at lower cost, capital cost, and operational cost, we are currently in the phase of moving into implementation. So hopefully another time when we do present, we're able to give our results, but we're currently in our phase of getting the necessary statutory approvals and environmental permits, engaging with the stakeholders again in terms of the use oil collection. Similar to St. Lucia's experience, we would like to be able to provide our stakeholders, a subset of the stakeholders that will be involved in the pilot project, with suitable storage containers, and in that way also provide a collection system to bring the use oil from our generators to the plants. We are also in the phase of, in this process of installation, our key things to consider at this phase as well are the actual storage on site, similar to St. Lucia, again, having it well bonded. We are in, because our project did not have like unlimited funds necessarily, which has been one of our challenges, we have sought in-kind co-financing in order to be able to have a secure and safe bonded storage area for our used oil. Tim's We will also be preparing an operation and maintenance manual and training for the suitable technicians that will be hired through the THA to operate this plant for monitoring. Great, thank you.
Thank you
I think that's it
so
for
much
me.
for that. Thank you. That was very interesting. Quick question from my side. If what you didn't tell us was the approximate cost of this pilot plant, and I'm sure many people are interested, and perhaps where it's manufactured also, just so we can understand a little bit more.
Yes, so due to the fact that we've had some delays in this project, and of course during the period of COVID our prices would have gone up in terms of shipping, etc. But it's roughly approximately US 275,000 for the cost of the plant, and it is the one that we, or the partner that we are working with, would be manufactured in India.
Okay. And then another participant has a question about the quantity of used oil to be re-refined in the pilot project, the quantities you're looking at in Tobago.
Right, so we at this capacity, because the plant is modular, it can be upgraded later on. However, at this stage, we're looking at a processing capacity of up to 25 barrels per day.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And will you sell the re-refined product?
Right, so currently, well, within the scope of the pilot project, we are seeking to engage with our local petroleum company in order to have an arrangement in terms of the use of the base oil. There is consideration and interest through the Tobago House of Assembly to produce a product, which will require an additional stage of blending. So this is part of our exploration within the pilot project as well.
But that makes sense. It'll stay in Tobago though.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Trinidad and Tobago.
Trinidad and Tobago. Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. I think we all learned a lot, and we very much look forward to when you can come back and tell us about the pilot. Right now, we're going to move to our final intervention and panelist. This is Roland Weber. Roland is a Stockholm Convention and POPs expert, and he's going to be speaking to us today about short-chain chlorinated paraffins, one of the new POPs, but as he reminds me, they've been there for 5 years, so not so new, and how they might relate to our management of used oil. Thank you very much, Roland, for being here. It's late for you, I know that. You have the floor.
Thanks, Melanie. Yeah, hello, everybody. Already Melanie told in the very beginning that there are also pollutants in waste oils. And in this presentation, I would like to shed some light on short-chain chlorinated paraffins as high-volume persistent organic pollutants in the Stockholm Convention, risk for waste oils. And there I make a question mark because we do not know, but you will see that there is certainly a risk. When we look to Stockholm Convention, we have now 34 persistent organic pollutants. These are chemicals which are persistent in the environment, also do not degrade in biota, bioaccumulate, and are toxic and have long-range transport. And what you probably know in relation to waste oil are the polychlorinated biphenyl, which have been challenges for waste oils recycling since the 1980s, with a low POP content limit of 50 milligram per kilogram. So this is the Basel Convention, which make or decide on a low POP content limit. And if then waste is above this limit, then it's considered a POP waste, and with challenges to recycle or reuse it. So levels have decreased from polychlorinated biphenyls in recent decades, and there is the aim for global PCB management by 2028. But in 2017, the Stockholm Convention listed short-chain chlorinated paraffins with a chlorine content of more than 48% as a POP, and also other chlorinated paraffin mixtures are considered POPs if they contain more than 1% of short-chain chlorinated paraffins. Furthermore, Currently, 3 more POPs candidates are evaluated by the POP review committee, including medium chain chlorinated paraffins. This is the sister or brother of short chain chlorinated paraffins. So when we look here to the structure of chlorinated paraffins, you see they are polychlorinated alkanes, and they are quite complex mixtures of several thousands of congeners. And according to their chain length, chlorinated paraffins are subdivided into short chain chlorinated paraffins. These have carbon chain lengths between 10 and 13, and they are listed in the Stockholm Convention. Medium chain chlorinated paraffins with a chain lengths of C14 to C17, which are at the moment evaluated, and long chain chlorinated paraffins with a chain length of 18 to 30 or longer. So here, these chlorinated paraffins are produced with different chlorination degree between 30 and 70%, and the variation options of chain length and the chlorination degree make them quite versatile in applications, and there are approximately 200 different commercial chlorinated paraffin formulations in use. When short-chain chlorinated paraffins were listed in the Stockholm Convention, they were not completely prohibited, but there are a range of exemptions of production and also use of chlorinated paraffins. This includes as a plasticizer in flexible PVC, additives in different rubber products, but also lubricant additives, in particular for engines of automobiles, electric generators, and wind power facilities for drilling in oil and gas exploration, petroleum refineries to produce diesel oil, but also exempted for metal processing. Other exemptions are for leather industry, waterproof, fire retardant paint, adhesives. So you see they are still around and are further produced and used and released. Therefore, an assessment of current uses and related contamination of products and waste and recycling stream is needed, and due to metal processing, lubricants and other lubricants, also waste oil might be a relevant waste fraction. When you look to the global production of chlorinated paraffins, you see that in the last 20 years, there was a dramatic increase in production. So since 2010 around, we have more than 1 million ton of annual production of chlorinated paraffins. Today, it's said about 1.4 million tons. This means the yearly chlorinated paraffin production is equal to the total PCB production in history. And actually, the production capacity is more than 2 million tons in the world, but they do not find enough products. So there is also quite a pressure on the market to bring these chlorinated paraffins into the market. The total production of short-chain chlorinated paraffins here is around 400,000 tons, often in mixtures. It is estimated that, or the largest producers are China and India, with an estimation that China is producing at least 700,000 tons, rather 1 million tons per year, and India around 370,000 tons a year. So the major use of chlorinated paraffins is as plasticizers in PVC and rubber, but the metalworking fluids and the lubricants are considered the second largest use, here with around, let's say, 15–20%. And when you look to the content of chlorinated paraffins in products, and here look to the lubricants and to the metalworking fluids, there are lubricants and metalworking fluids containing chlorinated paraffins between 1% and up to 70% by weight. So this is an example of a material safety data sheet of a car oil with a content of chlorinated paraffins between 30 to 60%. So the extent of such car oils and machinery oils is not known and might differ in regions and countries depending on the supply chain and the vendors of oils. So therefore, there might be a risk of contaminating waste oils with short-chain chlorinated paraffins and also with chlorine. And the people which are dealing with waste and which want to resell waste know that the chlorine content is also one criteria for selling or not selling a waste oil. However, there are no data at the moment on short-chain chlorinated paraffin in waste oil. So I have not seen any measurements which have looked to chlorinated paraffins in waste oil. But there is a need of assessment if short-chain and medium-chain chlorinated paraffins are present in relevant concentrations in lubricants and waste oil, because they are listed in the Stockholm Convention. Therefore, the Basel Convention has established a provisional low pop content for short-chain chlorinated paraffins. And at the moment, there are 3 provisional low pop content. The lowest is suggested for 100 milligram per kilogram, or 1,500 milligram per kilogram, or 10,000 milligram per kilogram in the waste. And there are different stakeholders which are proposing this and discussing since some years. I mean, countries can decide themselves what kind of low pop content they want to decide. For example, in Europe, we have 1,500 milligram per kilogram in products. Other countries at the moment might choose other limits. So if the 100 milligram per kilogram would be selected as low pop content, then 1 liter of car oil containing 50% short-chain paraffins would contaminate 5,000 liters of waste oils above the low pop content. Yeah, and this shows the risk which I see for chlorinated paraffins for waste oils. And also when you consider that medium-chain chlorinated paraffins are currently reviewed by the POP review committee and might be listed in 2025 as a POP, and medium-chain chlorinated paraffins are even produced in higher concentration compared to short-chain chlorinated paraffins. So also then medium-chain chlorinated paraffins will become a risk for waste oils. So therefore, in my opinion, an assessment of the presence of short-chain and medium-chain chlorinated paraffins in car oils and lubricants possibly entering waste oil streams is needed. As a first step, some waste oils might be screened for total halogens. That's a cheap screening method. So waste oils above 50 milligram per kilogram total organic chlorine should or could be screened for the presence then of short-chain paraffin, medium-chain paraffin, but also there are still PCBs. And we have heard in the first presentation that also the utility sector is contributing oil, and there is always the risk that also then transformer oil, which partly contain PCBs, might still be recycled. So also the PCB is not completely out yet. Yeah, so this kind of assessment is needed to know if there is a risk for POP in waste oil in regions and in the recycling. Last slide, some food for thought. A study from China on short and medium chain chlorinated paraffins in cooking oils. So a Chinese group has assessed 176 cooking oils, including olive oil, sesame, peanuts, and so on. And they found that the levels there of short and medium chain paraffins were up to 16 milligram per kilogram and 12 milligram per kilogram respectively. So you see that even for food oils, this huge chlorinated organic product is entering that chain. And I'm sure that for waste oil, there's a higher risk and probably sometimes higher concentrations. Yeah, thank you for your attention. Here are 2 review articles recommended. And also we have from the Stockholm Convention an inventory guidance for short chain chlorinated paraffins, which you can have a look at to understand and evaluate for these compounds and for your countries and islands.
Well, thank you so much, Roland. That was intriguing. And there's quite a few questions, I think, and some of us are maybe scratching their heads about the cooking oil, but let's not get to the cooking oil yet. Let's first go to the question from Anthony. Tony from SPREP just is asking, is there any data on the content of SCCPs in SIDS in used oil? There's been no sampling, right?
No, I said even worldwide, you know, I was looking for studies, in the waste oil, But as you see, I mean, first, the analysis of chlorinated paraffin is really complicated. It's much more complicated than the analysis of PCB. So therefore, I can promise you that in none of the islands there is anybody who has the capacity to analyze chlorinated paraffins, and that's also, you know, the reason that at the moment, yes, we are looking to human levels, we are looking to food, and we are not really at the waste stage. There is a Japanese national laboratory. They have established also a method, and they have started to analyze plastic fractions, because as you have seen, PVC is the major use additives in soft PVC. So therefore, there are already now initial assessments of waste PVC waste plastic for chlorinated paraffins, and yes, we find it.
Okay, so I think that brings us to the next question from Gerda, which is, can you give us an estimation of the cost per analysis for SCCPs? I understand there's not that many techniques. I also understand there's no SCCP test kits like we have for PCBs, but in your presentation, you mentioned analyzing perhaps for total halogen content, and perhaps it's worth just expanding on that.
Yes, I mean, the AOX, and I mean, what you are doing with the test kits for PCB is similar,
Chlorine.
That you just check for the total chlorine, and so this would also be my proposal, that you do a screening first of the AOX, and if they are then above, let's 50 ppm or 100 ppm, or people can decide, then to go further, we have a friend of mine, Professor Vetter, has developed a method also to measure chlorinated paraffins with low resolution GCMS. And we have established that, for example, for Brazil. So that's possible. And we had actually recently 5 webinars on POPs in plastic, which also included on the 5th day kind of introduction to analysis of chlorinated paraffins in one presentation. I can share the link that you can have a look to that. And also maybe it's interesting, the first one on chlorinated paraffins in plastic on the 2nd day.
Yeah, I think that would be great if you could share the links in the used oil community of practice as well. There's a lot of questions coming through about this. I think it was news to me, SCCPs in used oil. It's news to Tony, my good colleague at SPREP. Tony's asking, how can the folks in the used oil industry take measures to avoid SCCP contamination?
Yes, I mean, I think the first thing what I would do for the islands is really checking to the imports of lubricants. So I said it is not clear that the risk is high, and it is really unclear how much of the chlorinated paraffins are going into oil and lubricant production. Okay. In China, it is estimated that the share is quite low. But like I said, India has also a huge production, and we do not really know where the Indians put their chlorinated paraffins, and they have more exports. We had an evaluation for Brazil. We did an inventory for Brazil, and they found that a share or a relevant share of the chlorinated paraffins which were imported to Brazil were used as lubricants. And in the Middle East, we had one country where we found there was even a producer. And then the team, the Stockholm Convention inventory team, evaluated for what kind of uses they are using chlorinated paraffins in the country. And also there in that country, much went to the PVC, but also one part went as a lubricant in the food contact material sector. And they used chlorinated paraffins in the production of polyethylene, polypropylene packages. Yeah, so they poured it as a oil, as a kind of lubricant into that process. Yeah, so therefore my suggestion would be really you look to what kind of car oils are used in your country, yeah, to the material safety data sheet, if there is any chlorinated paraffins, and then also, let's say, to your lubricant importers, yeah, or even producers, yeah, if they are using chlorinated paraffins or not. And I mean, I shared with you the inventory guidance, yeah, and in the inventory guidance, this assessment of the lubricant sector is one of the task. Yeah, so this would be the first step. Yeah, and I think at the moment the waste oil producers, they might have really difficult to understand, because also I think those which have the waste oil from the cars don't know what is in it. Yeah, if there is. Yeah, so therefore look upfront. Yeah, and do in the waste oil some monitoring of the total halogen.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think that makes sense, and that's quite clear. So we are very much nearing the end of our webinar, folks. I think this has been a great conversation. I just wanted to come back to one question for Davis, which came from Gerda earlier, and it's a specific question on the dewatering process to make the used oil suitable for the diesel generators. How do you deal with emissions to air? And that's a question for Davis, if you're still there.
I would have to contact the representative at Saint-Michel to follow up on that question.
Perfect, thank you. Davis, if you were able to do that and you could pop the answer in the Green Forum community of practice, we can continue the conversation there. We do want to respect everyone's time, and thank everyone very much for being here. It's been, as some of you have mentioned in the chat, a really fascinating discussion, and I think it's fair to say used oil is a very challenging issue, and this issue with SCCPs makes it even more so. But I think we've got some great clues on where to start with looking at imports in the lubricating oils in SIDS, because we are in SIDS importing everything. So we can check this for a start. So please do join the Islands Used Oil Community of Practice. We want to continue the conversation there, and we're lucky that our great speakers today have agreed to join the community and continue to answer your questions there. We'll be putting the presentation from Roland and the presentation from Davis on the community, as well as the recording from the webinar, in case there's anything you'd like to hear again. Thank you again, everyone, for your time. It's been really fascinating to hear these inputs, and please enjoy the rest of your day or evening and join us on our next webinar, which will be in September. Thanks again and good night.
Melanie?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, might I add something? I mean, one
Yes.
is I heard now that people are very much interested in this pyrolysis thing. And I also wondered why to pyrolyze oil. Yeah, I mean, in Germany overall, in the 40 years experience of pyrolysis, we were not really successful. Yeah, and actually all our waste pyrolysis finally did not succeed. Yeah, and we tried hard. Yeah, we tried different things. So but I think also there for Melanie, you might one time look in one of your webinars into more depth of this pyrolysis thing, especially when it comes now to small islands which are not so experienced with technologies. So pyrolysis is something quite complex. And with pyrolysis, you mentioned in the beginning the polyaromatic hydrocarbons. They are for sure a huge pollutant of pyrolysis. I mean, that's one reason. And Julia, in the beginning, you said there is something black coming out. Probably you meant black carbon. This is normally the residue when you pyrolyze tires. Then you have normally two products. One is the oil, and one is the kind of carbon black. Yeah, but I think it would be valuable in future one time to think on a own webinar about pyrolysis.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Roland, for that and I know that Julie would probably like to come in, but we are going to continue. We're going to try and respect people's time and close the webinar and encourage everyone to continue this discussion on pyrolysis and other methods for managing used oil in the community of practice. So please do join us there, and let's continue this discussion, and we can take up this issue in a future webinar. Thanks again, everyone. Good night.
Yeah,
Thank you. Good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.
Bye.